Welcome back to the Nat Geo YouTube channel. My name is Claire, and I'm going to be your host for today's episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the effects of population density on the spread of illnesses. More specifically, we'll be discussing how an extremely dense population, such as the favelas in Brazil, can spread illnesses quicker than a less dense environment. Well, population density can be described as the number of individuals that live in a certain area. For example, let's say we have two cities, City A and City B. If City A and City B have the exact same amount of land, and City A has 500 people living in it, while City B only has 2, we could say that City A has a much higher population density than City B. Now, what about illnesses? Well, an illness is something that can be passed down, can be passed from person to person, and is a disease that can harm the body. In today's special edition of Nat Geo YouTube, we're going to be having 2 special guests. This is Haya, an expert in the topic of population density and the spread of illnesses. She came all the way from Caracas, Venezuela. Take it away, Haya.
Hey everyone, I'm Haya, your expert for today's episode. So how does population density affect the spread of illness? Well, studies show that in places where lots of people live close together, like the favelas in Brazil, disease spread much faster. That's because there are more chances for viruses and bacteria to move from one person to another through coughing, sneezing, or even touching shared surfaces. During outbreaks like COVID-19, high-density areas had higher infection rates compared to places with fewer people. For instance, a study published by the National Institute of Health found a strong positive correlation between population density and COVID-19 infection rates in Bangladesh, explaining about 60% of variation in cases. Also, in crowded environments, it's harder to quarantine or isolate when someone's sick. On top of that, poor sanitation and unclean water make perfect breeding grounds for mosquitoes, which spread disease like Zika and malaria. So when you put all of that together, tight living spaces, poor infrastructure, and limited healthcare, it's clear that high population density makes it much easier for illness to spread.
Thank you so much for that insight, Haya. It might have been difficult for us to find an expert in our topic, but how can we find someone who's affected by high population density? Why don't we fly somewhere? Let's go to the favelas in Brazil. It's totally packed here. This is Benicio, I found in the slums of the favelas.
Hola. My name's Benicio. I've lived in Brazil for my whole life, and Roxana for 56 years. Here in the favelas, we don't get a lot of running water or electricity because we have a lack of proper sanitation and a lot of storm water that collects waste in our drainage. This means we have a lot of standing water and mosquitoes, lots of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, fleas, and ticks bring disease with them, like Lyme disease, Zika, and malaria. Also, people are very densely packed in the favelas, with a lot of homes being built without spacing in between them. Without proper drainage, there's a continuous risk for disease-carrying vectors. Vectors leads to tons of illnesses being spread throughout the favelas, with minimum effort being put into solving and fixing these situations. Because the favelas are so poor, not a lot of people can afford vaccines to build up resistance to certain illnesses, so common illnesses can be deadly. In the favela, I've learned to live with certain diseases that in more wealthy and urban areas, these illnesses could have been eliminated.
3, 2, 1. Thank you, Benicio. This really goes to show the great impact that population density has on the spread of illnesses in the favelas. It's really interesting to see how population densities can vary so widely across continents. Thank you so much for your time, Benicio. Like they say in Brazil,
Ciao.
ciao! Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, Haya. And thank you for sharing your story with us, Benicio. That's it, guys. That's a wrap. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.